The sun had just started to rise over the island continent of Yaria, and the first light of morning began trickling through the windows of a small tavern situated in the town of Fenhall. Despite the early hour, quite a large number of individuals had already gathered in the tavern's main room, drinking, chatting, and singing. At any other time of the year, this place would be barren, save for a few regulars. But today was a special day. Today was the start of Fenhall's annual tournament. Spectators and competitors alike are drawn from all over the world in order to experience such an event where only the most skilled warriors compete for glory and coin. A special few of such contestants find themselves in this very tavern. A male half-elf, donned in an elegant green, white, and golden robe, sits alone reading at one of the smaller tables towards the back of the room, face deep in thought. A human man, cloaked in night black leather armor, hood and cowl covering all but his eyes and a flick of brown hair, repeatedly tosses a dagger into the air as he leans against one of the tavern's many support beams. A tan half-elf sits away from the crowd, watching the pub's many patrons with curiosity, himself quite the spectacle in these lands. Being a monk with curly black hair tied into a bun, his lower half dressed in orange holy robe, complete with beads and religious adornments in various spots on his body. And over by the window, a large hulking brute of a dragonborn, wearing only a leather kilt, braces, his own brass scales, and a necklace with a single tooth, attempts to feed an apple to one of the horses, seemingly failing to attract any attention. As everyone goes about their own business, the tavern's door suddenly slams open with enough force to shake some of the dust from the rafters. The crowd goes silent, and all attention turns to the heavily armored dwarf that is now standing in the doorway, aged eyes skimming the room before opening his mouth. "Hey guys!" That was weird. The crowd returns to normal as the gold-covered dwarf trots over to the bar before ordering a drink. As this goes on, the human that was flipping his dagger also heads over to the bar, jumping over the crowd and landing onto a bar stool in a display of impressive acrobatic ability. The two strangers exchange momentary glances, both ordering a pint of beer. They share no words as they turn their attention back to finishing their drinks. Realizing that his efforts are in vain, the Dragonborn gives up trying to gain the attention of the horses. Feeling a tad thirsty, he attempts to push through the crowd to get a drink. Despite his towering size, he's unable to make any progress. Not wanting to harm anyone and trying again, he decides to wait until later. Glancing over the pub, he notices the lone half-elf reading his book. Curious, he approaches. With little thought to personal space, the giant attempts to read over his shoulder, making no conscious effort to hide his presence. Although able to see the text clearly, the Dragonborn has absolutely no idea what it says, likely due to the fact it's not written in Common, nor Draconic. If the shadow cast by the large creature behind him wasn't enough, the half-elf was definitely made aware of his presence when he heard his attempts at reading the book's words out loud. He turns around to the scaled giant, closing his book and setting it down. "Can I help you?" The Dragonborn smiles a big toothy grin before enthusiastically shooting out his hand. "Hello, name's Barbosa." Cautious of this strange creature, but detecting no ill will, the half-elf shakes Barbosa's hand. "Rorik Sina," he states. "What you reading?" inquires Barbosa, pointing to the book. I'm just doing some research, nothing worth discussing." "Oh, alright. I couldn't read it anyways," Barbosa admits, scratching the back of his head. Rorik nods, attention slowly draining out of the conversation. Slowly, the patrons start to filter out of the tavern, likely making their way over to the stadium where the tournament will soon take place. Noticing this, our heroes start making their exit too, beginning with the dwarf, followed by the human. Seeing his chance to end this awkward conversation, Rorik excuses himself. "I have to go, have a good day." "No worries, mate. Same here, gotta get going myself." And with that, Barbosa excitedly jogs out of the door, tailed shortly after by a somewhat bewildered Rorik. The monk, having witnessed the entire ordeal, chuckles to himself and shakes his head, getting up and joining the crowd in heading for the stadium. Before making his way to the stadium, the dwarf takes a small detour down one of the side streets to the town's church, a modest building of cobblestone with only a single room for which to hold small gatherings. At the end of the room sits a large altar, upon which small figures of various deities stand proudly. Some very humanoid in appearance, whilst others appear to be more of a bestial nature. The gold-plated paladin kneels beneath the model of a muscular bearded dwarf wielding a massive hammer, and whispers a short prayer. After the brief moment of recital, a warm radiance washes over him, filling him with renewed vigor as he stands up and sets off out and back towards the stadium. The dirt road leading up to the city's makeshift coliseum bustled with life, stalls lining the streets and their vendors calling out in an attempt to sell their trinkets, food and memorabilia for the event. One such stall, a purveyor of cooked meats, catches the attention of Barbossa, who happily exchanges some coin for an entire cooked pig's leg before continuing on his way. The Dragonborn makes short work of the limb, cleaning it of all of its meat by the time he and the other contestants arrive inside. Although an event known in many parts of the world, the tournament itself is held in a rather humble arena. The edges of the arena were indicated by simple wooden fencing, and there isn't much in the way of seating for the spectators. But for what it lacked in quality, it more than made up for in sheer size. The arena itself was a massive dirt circle stretching almost half a mile, with various sections for different tests of skill. Barbossa, Rorik and the others stared out at the courses ahead of them, as well as the gathering hordes of spectators that were now jostling for the best viewpoints. The shrouded human was the first to arrive and sign up for the competition, approaching the small stand manned by a young halfling.
Just put your name here, and that will be 1 gold, please.
Without a word, the hooded figure signs and flicks a coin to the small creature who fumbles, almost dropping it.
Thanks.
One by one, the participants signed up and stood by for instructions, Barbossa looking around curiously as he gnawed on what was now just a bone. The foreign monk used this time as a chance to mingle with the other contestants, approaching the reptile with cheer-filled intrigue.
"Hello! Fine day for it, is it not?"
asked the monk. Barbossa looked down to the man, a brief look of confusion on his face before returning the friendly greeting.
"Sure is, mate,"
states Barbossa, removing the bone from his teeth.
"I saw you at the tavern. You seemed a friendly fellow, so I thought I'd introduce myself and wish you good luck."
The monk offers his hand.
"I'm Egdorf. Egdorf Vitu."
Barbossa eagerly grabs the monk's hand, shaking it with what some may mistake for ferocity if it weren't for the gleeful smile on his face.
"Barbossa, nice to meet you, Egdorf Vitu."
Will all the contestants please line up for the shot put challenge?
Shouted the announcer.
It seems we must get ready,"
Egdorf states, briefly checking his arm as he walks into position.
"It was nice speaking with you, Mr. Barbossa. May fortune favor you this day."
"Cheers, mate! Same to you, Egdorf."
Barbossa waves excitedly as they both find their places, despite being right next to each other. After everyone readies themselves, the announcer pipes up again.
First up, and returning 5-year champion and crowd favorite, Brock!
As the announcer finishes and the crowd's cheering increases tenfold, a large muscular orc steps forward, shot put in hand. With little effort, he bolts forward, stopping within a hair's width of the line, sending the heavy ball flying like a comet, landing with a dull thud.
65 feet, a new record! It seems Brock is already off to a strong start. That's going to be a tough one to follow.
With a cocky smirk, Brock stands, arms folded and waiting to observe the other contestants, all the while basking in the crowd's adoration.
Next up is Rorik Cena. Let's see what tricks he has on that big old robe of his. He's gonna need him.
Rorik stands over the metal sphere, contemplating his next action. He bends down to pick up the ball with both of his hands, clearly struggling with its weight and unable to bring it up to the classic shot put position. Instead, the wizard decides to use his brain in this contest of brawn, spinning around many times with the momentum of the ball threatening to break free of his grasp, Brock giving an audible chuckle. Spinning right up to the line, Rorik releases the ball, sending it flying much further than most anticipated. As it drops to the ground, so does Brock's cocky smile.
I don't believe it. 70 feet!
Shouts the announcer, barely audible over the crowd's cheering.
I guess you should never judge a book by its cover. Now, on to the next contestant. Dane Ironfoot, show these big fellas what us smaller guys can do.
With the mention of his name, the golden dwarf picks up the ball.
He may be graying and getting on in years, but let's see what this guy can do, folks.
Dane takes 4 steps back, raising the shot put into proper position before running forward and pushing the ball free into the air. It flies past the 10 feet marker, 20 feet, and drops dead at 24.
Well, a valiant effort for someone his age.
Dane kicks the ground in slight frustration.
Alright everybody, we still have a few more to go.
10 minutes go by as the remaining contestants place at moderate distances, none quite reaching the record held by the surprising young Rorik.
Last but not least, it's... Barbara?
States the halfling, struggling to read the handwriting.
It's Barbossa!
The previous docile dragonborn shouted with obvious frustration written on his scowling face.
Sorry, sir, of course. That's an S?
He mutters to himself. Barbossa, still slightly annoyed, continues to gnaw on his half-eaten bone, holding it in one of his hands as he approaches the ball. With a quick scoop, he picks it up, as well as a handful of arena dirt with his free hand. With a nonchalant overarm toss, launches the ball, it flying past both Brock and Rorik's balls, before finally coming to a stop at...
80? My word, one broken record after another! Looks like this year's tournament is going to be something special indeed.
Barbossa, unaware of his apparent record, pouts on a nearby bench. My name is not Barbara.
Alright, that should wrap up the shot put competition. Whilst we get set up at the log fighting pit, we're going to take a short intermission.
The announcer and some event staff make their way over to the next section. That was quite the throw, says Dane, having approached the unaware Brock, who towers a good 3.5 feet over him. Impressive stuff there, mate. You make it look easy, he states, making an attempt at friendly banter.
I know.
Is all the orc says as he snorts, turning and walking away from Dane. Wow, what a cockhead, says Dane, clearly audible enough for the orc to hear. Brock continues to ignore the dwarf's existence. Quite a rude fellow, is he not? A voice pipes up from behind Dane. He looks over to see the foreign monk eyeing Brock curiously. Well, that's one way to put it. I'm Dane, by the way. He offers his hand. Egdurf replying in kind. Yes, I saw your throw before, he says with a slight smirk. Aye, not my best performance. What brings you here? What was your name again, sorry? Egdurf. Nothing in particular, just doing a spot of travelling and thought I might try my luck. Yourself? Dane looks at the holy symbol of Moradin attached to his necklace, furrowing his brow. Same here, really. By the time the pair finished the conversation, the announcer had already begun calling over contestants to begin the next trial.
First up, it's Brock versus Dane.
Both readied in their positions at either side of the pit. The pit was roughly 5 feet in depth, with a shallow pool of mud at the bottom, a large, smooth log acting as a bridge across it. Each contestant was handed a wooden pole, to presumably act as a means of knocking their opponent off balance whilst maintaining their own. Brock was the first to step up onto the log, keeping balance easily whilst waiting for his opponent. Dane, eager to knock the orc on his arse, steps onto the log, a little shakier than Brock but still maintaining his balance.
Alright lad, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough,
he taunts, wobbling as he does so. Brock strikes Dane quickly to the back of the head, almost knocking him off in one blow. Dane drops his pole but catches himself by hanging onto the log.
Okay then.
Before Dane can right himself, he takes a kick to the face and is sent down into the muck.
Looks like Brock still got it, folks!
Shouts the tiny announcer as the dwarf, still a bit dazed, clears the mud from his eyes and looks up at Brock, who's still on the log, looking down with a big, tusk-filled smile. Dane grits his teeth as he leaves.
Next, can we have Barbara?
The halfling catches himself as he notices the dragonborn eyeing him with a frown.
Barbossa and Egdurf. Time to fight!
Egdurf hops onto the log with staff in hand, spinning it above himself with a demonstration of expertise. Barbossa follows suit, though it's obvious that he's a lot less comfortable than his opponent, occasionally extending his tail or leg for extra balance.
Hello again, my friend. Looks like you're my opponent.
Good luck, Barbossa chuckles, adorning a furrowed brow and a playful grin.
Cheers! I'll do me best.
Barbossa swings the staff, gripping it like a bat at one end, but the monk easily hops over it. Egdurf smacks the reptile on the nose, knocking him a step back. Regaining his composure, Barbossa attempts another attack, only to be smacked in the stomach, eliciting an oof as all the air leaves his lungs and puts him off balance. This attack is followed up by a smack to the heels, sending the massive body of Barbossa into the mud, causing a huge splash that soaks a few nearby observers, including Brock, who looks less than pleased. Egdurf hops down gracefully into the pit, offering his hand to Barbossa.
Well fought, but I'm afraid the victory is mine today.
Barbossa, belly down and still semi-submerged in the mud, grabs the monk's hand and gets up, a booming laugh emanating from his mouth.
Did you see that splash? Bloody hell, that was worth it. Sorry.
Barbossa waves to the newly drenched and dirty group as they leave the pit. Soon after, Drake and Rorik begin their match, but before any words can be exchanged, the young rogue maneuvers behind Rorik and shoves him off the log in one swift movement.
Okay, well, they were faster than expected. That last one especially.
As the day progresses, the contestants compete in various feats of physical prowess before coming to the obstacle course.
Alright everyone, here are the rules. Reach the summit of the hill before anyone else to win. And remember, after the bell you're allowed to employ any non-lethal tactics to get ahead.
The announcer points to the starting line.
Now everyone get into position.
The contestants that were previously stretching get ready at the start of the sandpit that leads onto the rest of the course. The course itself is comprised of areas simulating different terrains and environments. From the starting position, a fallen tree can be seen over a deep pool of water. After this, a dirt trail leads up to a cliff-like rock wall that obscures the rest of the course, except the hill that can be seen in the far-off distance.
On your marks, get set.
The announcer clicks his fingers and a loud bang can be heard all around.
Go!
And with that, everyone darts forward. It's a scramble as Brock shoots to the head of the pack, closely followed behind by Egdurf and Drake. 2 meters back, the dwarf, still covered in armor, keeps pace with Barbossa, who charges forward like a mad bull, head down and arms almost touching the ground. Behind these two, Rorik stumbles over his robe, fighting to get back to his feet despite this fumble. Unbeknownst to those in front, the Dragonborn had gathered enough speed to barrel past and onto the log where Brock was just dismounting. Maneuvering past, Barbossa attempts to trip the orc with his tail. Brock smirks again as he evades with ease, putting distance between the two. Being preoccupied with Brock, the brass beast manages to trip on his own tail, his face once again becoming acquainted with the ground. As he cleans the dirt from his eyes and rights himself, he observes Brock looking over his shoulder, not paying enough attention to the path ahead, causing him to trip all by himself in a similar fashion to Barbossa. Taking advantage of the moment, Drake leaps off of the Dragonborn's back, past the downed Brock, and up onto the cliff face, finding every climbable nook with a cat-like grace. Much to everyone's surprise, Dane is not far behind him, scrambling up the wall surface. Brock, now furious, charges for the wall and is about to throw all of his effort into climbing, when he hears a commotion from the crowd and stops dead in his tracks. Following his gaze, Barbossa also stops, as does Rorik, Egdurf, and Drake in their respective positions. Screams of pure horror emanate from the crowd. A horde of goblins that seemingly appeared from nowhere are viciously attacking the crowd, chasing down fleeing observers on massive hound-like beasts, one of which grabs an elderly elfman in its jaws and shakes him violently, sending fragments of blood and viscera flying everywhere. Completely unaware of this, Dane crests the cliff and sprints through the thicket of trees at the next part of the course, ignoring the completely stationary Drake. Egdurf is the first to take action, sprinting off of the course and towards the conflict. Witnessing this, Barbossa, Drake, and Rorik snap out of their stupor and follow suit. Brock, however, quietly makes his way off of the track and out of the stadium. Nearing the end of the course, Dane looks behind himself and chuckles.
Eat me dust, you tuss twat, no catching up now.
Out of breath but still determined to win, Dane has the top of the hill in his sights.
Wonder why no one's even close. Must be faster than I thought.
A smile stretching across his face as he reaches the peak and catches his breath.
I did it! Eat shit, Dad, you crotchety cut!
His eyes fall upon the bloodshed. Pupils going wide and smile faltering quickly from his face. Ah. He pulls the warhammer from his bag, his grip tightening around it as he takes a long, deep breath.
Right.